على رسول الله وعلى نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل يا رب العالمين. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. The author rahimahullah, he continues, and we're continuing from the chapter of Siyam, of fasting. He says, he continues with a chapter or a subheading on the ruling of forgetfulness or compulsion. And he says, وَإِن فَعَلَهُ نَاسِيًا أَوْ مُكْرَهًا لَمْ يَفْسُدْ. And if a person does one of the acts that break the fast, so he eats or he consumes something or he does some act which will break his fast, then if he does it and he's forgetful, and we covered this yesterday, or he's forced, then this does not break his fast, it does not nullify his fast. Then he, rahimahullah, he goes on to say, he says mistakes, and now he will talk about the mistakes when a person eats and he thinks it's night, or he thinks when in reality it is the daytime. What happens? So he says, rahimahullah, وَمَنْ أَكَلَ يَظُنُّهُ لَيْلًا فَبَانَ نَهَارًا فَعَلَيْهِ الْقَضَاء. He says, so whoever eats, he thinks that it's night, but in reality it turns out to be the day, then he must make up that day. So he must make up that day. And then he says, rahimahullah, وَمَنْ أَكَلَ شَاكًّا فِي طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ لَمْ يَفْسُدْ صَوْمُهُ وَإِنْ أَكَلَ شَاكًّا فِي غُرُوبِ الشَّمْسِ فَعَلَيْهِ الْقَضَاء. So he says, whoever eats and he has a doubt at the time of that Fajr has arrived, so he's not sure has Fajr arrived or not, right? He has a doubt, and he's eating, then his fast is not nullified. Because the asl is that the night, baqa al-layl, that the night, it is night. If you're coming from the night, then the asl is that it is night. However, he goes on to say, وَإِنْ أَكَلَ شَاكًا فِي غُرُوبِ الشَّمْسِ. And if he eats and he thinks that the sun has set it already, then he needs to make up qada, he needs to make up another day for missing that day, because the asl in that case, the origin in that case, is that it is the daytime, right? So as long as it's the daytime, you need proof, you need solid proof, you need some solid evidence that the sun has set. So if he's in doubt, then what do? You go back to the certainty, and you are certain that it is the daytime. And that is why if he eats in the morning time, he's certain that it was night, but he is doubtful if it is the morning. So in that case, he does not have to make up his fast. Wallahu a'lam. And in either of the cases where he needs to make up his fast, there's an important point to note here, that he's not getting sins, or he's not getting ithm, right? For this, if he's doubtful, right? He does not get ithm. Rather, it is just from an aspect of, is his fast accepted or not, and he needs to make it up, inshallah. Then the author, rahimahullah, he goes on to another chapter and he says, Babu Siyamu at-Tatawwu', the chapter of voluntary fast. And this chapter, the author mentions all of the different fasting which is voluntary, which a person can do, which is outside of the month of Ramadan. He says, أفضل الصيام صيام داود عليه السلام كان يصوم يوما ويفطر يوما. He says, rahimahullah, that the best fasting is that of the Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. He used to fast one day, and he used to fast every other day. So he used to fast one day, and another day, the day after, he would take a break. And that is the best type of fasting, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us in an authentic hadith. وأفضل الصيام بعد شهر رمضان شهر الله الذي يدعونه المحرم وما من أيام عمل الصالح فيهن أحب إلى الله من عشر ذي الحجة. And then he, rahimahullah, he says that the best fasting after the month of Ramadan is the month of Allah that they call Muharram. So it is the month of Muharram, كما ثبت في الصحيح, as it is mentioned in the authentic ahadith. وَمَا مِنْ أَيَّامٍ, and there is no other days which righteous deeds are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the first days of the Hijjah. So him saying this, meaning that it is recommended to fast on these days of the Hijjah. And we have some ahadith which indicate that the Prophet ﷺ used to fast on the first 9 days of the Hijjah. وَمَنْ صَامَ رَمَضَانَ وَأَتْبَعَهُ بِسِتٍ مِّن شَوَّالٍ فَكَأَنَّمَا صَامَ الدَّهْرَ كُلَّهُ. And whomever fasts the month of Ramadan and follows it up with 6 days after in the days of the Hijjah, it is as if he has fasted an entire lifetime. And this is also mentioned in the authentic ahadith. And the reason is because the deeds are multiplied by 10. So if a person fasts for 30 days, you multiply this by 10, it equals to 300. And if you fast 6 days extra, it will equal 360. And that is the entire year for a lunar calendar, 360 days. And if a person continues to do this every single year, then it is as if he has fasted an entire lifetime. وَصِيَامُ يَوْمِ عَاشُورَ كَفَّارَةُ سَنَةٍ وَصِيَامُ يَوْمِ عَرَفَ كَفَّارَةُ سَنَتَيْنِ وَلَا يُسْتَحَبُّ لِمَنْ كَانَ بِعَرَفَ أَنْ يَصُومَهُ. And the fasting of the day of Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, is an expiation of sins for 1 year. And the fasting of the day of Arafah is an expiation of the sins for 2 years. As the Prophet ﷺ told us in an authentic hadith. وَلَا يُسْتَحَبُّ لِمَنْ كَانَ بِعَرَفَةٍ أَنْ يَصُومَهُ. And whom it is not recommended for the one that is in Arafah doing Hajj to fast on this day. And the reason is because he is doing Hajj, and a person that is doing Hajj and he has an accepted Hajj, then his reward is that he will be forgiven for all of his sins. Right? He will be forgiven for all of his sins. So he has that special, specific act of ibadah, his Hajj. That is his ibadah that he has to do. And for everyone else, they will fast and they can achieve their forgiveness by fasting. And their reward is the forgiveness for 2 years, the year before and the year after. وَيُسْتَحَبُّ صِيَامُ أَيَّامِ الْبِيضِ وَاثْنَيْنِ وَالْخَمِيسِ. And it is recommended to fast the white days, and the white days are the days are the 13th, 14th, and 15th, as the Prophet ﷺ used to fast every single month, and also Mondays and Thursdays. وَالصِّيَامُ الْمُتَطَوِّعُ أَمِيرُ نَفْسِهِ إِنْ شَاءَ صَامَ وَإِنْ شَاءَ أَفْطَرَ وَلَا قَضَاءَ عَلَيْهِ. And the person that's performing these voluntary fasts is in charge of himself, meaning that whomever wants to fast on these days, then he can fast. It's his own choice. There is no command. He does not have to do it, but he chooses for himself if he wants to fast, or he doesn't want to fast, he wants to break his fast and eat during those days. If he wants, he may fast. If he wants, he may break his fast, in which case he is not required to make it up. So any of these days, for example, you miss the day of Arafah, or you miss fasting on the day of Ashura, right? And you feel that you've missed, a tremendous missed out, a tremendous sunnah. You do not have to make it up. You're not required to make it up. And he says, وَكَذَلِكَ سَائِرُ التَّطَوُّعِ إِلَّا الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةِ فَإِنَّهُ يَجِبُ إِتْمَامُهُمَا وَقَضَاءُ مَا أَفْسَدَ مِنْهُمَا. Likewise are all voluntary acts except for Hajj and Umrah. These two must be completed when invalidated. It is mandatory to make them up. So he goes on to a tangent here, which does not have to do with fasting, but it does have to do with making up the voluntary acts. So he says that likewise is every other voluntary act, meaning that if you miss a sunnah, right? 2 rak'ah sunnah or nafil, or you miss some other sort of sunnah in your life, you do not have to make it up. It is up to you. You know, you are an amir for yourself. You are the owner for yourself. You decide if you want to do that particular sunnah or not, except in two cases, and that is a hajj or a umrah. So a hajj, a second hajj, which would be a sunnah hajj, so a voluntary hajj, or an umrah, which is voluntary. If you do this and you do something to to mess up your hajj or your umrah, and you need to redo that hajj or umrah, then if it's invalidated, it is mandatory to make them up. So you have to redo it. If you do something to nullify the actual hajj or the umrah, even though it's a voluntary act, it's a sunnah act, then you still need to make it up. And he concludes by saying, وَنَهَى النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن صوم يومين يوم الفطر يوم الأضحى ويوم الأضحى ونهى عن صوم أيام التشريك إلا أنه أرخص في صومهما في صومها للمتمتع إذا لم يجد الهدي. And then he rahimahullah, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, or he forbid, naha, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he forbid fasting on 2 days, the days of Eid, which is the day of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And in addition to this, he forbid fasting on Ayyam al-Tashriq, the days of Tashriq, which are the following days after Eid al-Adha, except for the person that is doing Hajj Tamattu' and he cannot afford afford a sacrificial animal. Then for him, he has to fast. These days of Tashriq. It is permissible for him to fast these days. And then he says, وَلَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ فِي الْوِتْرِ مِنْ الْعَشْرِ الْأَوَاخِرِ مِنْ رَمَضَانِ. And the night of decree, Laylatul Qadr, is one of the odd nights in the last 10 days of Ramadan. And he puts this here because this is the chapter of fasting, and seeking the night of Laylatul Qadr occurs in Ramadan, which is from the chapter of fasting. So it is the most suitable to put it in this chapter. And he's basically just explaining or telling us that the night of Laylatul Qadr will occur in one of the odd nights in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.